On a moonless night in rural Kentucky, 1860, the Carrington homestead's windows shattered in a single, deafening blast. Yet no storm howled, no shot rang out. In the inky darkness, Clara Carrington's final scream clawed through the still air before being swallowed by the yawning cornfields. By dawn, her blood-stained footprints trailed into the woods, and then simply stopped, vanished as if the earth itself had exhaled her into oblivion. Whispers among the tobacco barns spoke of a promise broken long ago, an unholy bargain carved in blood beneath the hearthstone, binding every Carrington child to a legacy of sorrow. Neighbors dared not cross the threshold after sunset, fearing the embrace of a shadow they called the Carrington curse. Mothers hushed their children with tales of Clara's ghost, her pale hand tapping at bedroom windows, beckoning them into the dark. Tonight we unravel the chilling story of Kentucky's most haunted family, how a single act of betrayal summoned a specter that would stalk 5 generations, leaving ruin and madness in its wake. Stoke your hearth fire and draw your cloak tight, because the Carrington curse is about to claim its next list. If you hunger for bone-chilling tales from history's darkest corners, smash that like button and subscribe now, then ring the bell so you never miss a new horror history mystery. Have you ever felt a family legend whispering through the walls of your own home? Drop your story or your take on the Carrington curse in the comments below. Share this video with fellow seekers of the uncanny, and together we'll unearth the hidden horrors buried beneath America's past. Your engagement powers our next descent into forgotten nightmares. Stay vigilant and prepare for the unknown. In the decades following America's founding, Kentucky's rolling bluegrass hills beckoned settlers with promises of fertile land and fresh starts. Among the earliest to stake a claim along Bear Creek was Joseph Carrington Sr., an Irish immigrant who arrived in 1787 with little more than a charter granting 200 acres and a heart full of ambition. By 1790, he had erected a sturdy log cabin of oak timbers felled from the creek's banks, laying the cornerstones of what would become the Carrington homestead. The cabin sat atop a gentle rise, overlooking fields of corn, tobacco and hemp crops cultivated by hand with the help of hired hands and tragically indentured labor. Joseph Sr.'s marriage in 1792 to Margaret O'Leary solidified the family's roots. Margaret brought with her not only the dowry customary for the time, household linens, a cow and silver spoons, but also family lore of a broken oath with a Cherokee healer. According to whispered accounts, Joseph Sr. once sought a clandestine remedy for his ailing wife, promising in desperation to sacrifice a firstborn child in exchange for Margaret's recovery. Though Margaret's health improved that spring, the price of that vow would echo through generations. By 1804, emboldened by yield from tobacco and hemp, the Carringtons replaced the original cabin with a 2-story hall and parlor house, clad in clapboard and topped with a broad gabled roof. A separate kitchen wing connected by a covered breezeway housed the hearth, where Margaret baked cornbread and boiled hams, filling the house with comforting aromas that belied the darker secrets beneath the floorboards. A small family cemetery took shape beside the house, demarcated by a hand-carved oak fence. Here Joseph Sr. laid to rest his first 2 infant sons, claimed by fevers that swept Bear Creek's valleys with merciless cruelty. Prosperity came at a price. The Carrington estate required laborers to clear timber and tend sprawling fields, increasing the family's reliance on indentured servants. Local Baptists decried the practice, calling it half-freedom in the land of liberty, but Joseph Sr. argued that until laborers could be paid fair wages, indenture was the only path to Kentucky's promise. In 1812, tensions flared when an Irish servant named Patrick Malloy escaped the property claiming he had been beaten for falling ill. His disappearance prompted the first murmurings of a family that exacted its own brand of justice, or curse. When Joseph Sr. died in 1820, his eldest son Joseph Jr. inherited the homestead, but not the burden of his father's secret, as he married Mary Thompson in 1823 and fathered 3 children, Samuel, Clara, and Benjamin. Joseph Jr. labored under his father's unspoken debt. Mary, a devout Presbyterian, sought to cleanse the home with weekly revivals and Bible readings, imploring the community's pastor to bless each threshold. Yet locals whispered that on stormy nights, the wind carried a low rasping chant around the house, words no one dared translate. By mid-19th century, the Carrington legacy spanned over 500 acres, including a tobacco press barn, smokehouse, and enslaved quarters, a grim reminder that the family's rise paralleled the perpetuation of bondage. The Emancipation Proclamation would come too late for many Carrington laborers, but for the family the real shackle was an invisible one tied to that ancient bargain. On quiet evenings, Joseph Jr.'s daughter Clara would play near the hearthstone where legend held a small iron amulet, a twisted chicken foot pendant, buried beneath, marking the site where Margaret's healer had stood demanding the price of life itself. Thus, by 1860, as Civil War clouds gathered on the horizon, the Carrington homestead was more than a family farm. It was a crucible of unatoned sin and whispered retribution. Prosperous fields hid a secret beneath the hearth, a curse conjured by a betrayal that no revival meeting could exorcise. In the late summer of 1860, the Carrington homestead, placid rhythms shattered like glass. It began with a fever mysterious and swift that claimed 2 of Joseph Jr.'s sons, Samuel and Benjamin, within a week of one another. Local physician Alden Price diagnosed typhoid, but confessed in his ledger that the symptoms did not fully align. Samuel's skin had turned ashen gray, and Benjamin's eyes glowed a strange phosphorescent green in the moonlight. When Mary Carrington wrapped her boys in white linen for the family burial plot, she later swore she heard faint laughter drifting from the cornfields at dusk. Just 3 nights after the second funeral, on September 2, neighbors reported a blood-curdling scream echoing from the back pasture. Martha Holt, the widowed neighbor who kept chickens along the shared fence line, later recounted, "I saw Clara running barefoot in her white nightdress, her hair streaming behind her like a banner. She came down the lane screaming for Mother, help me, but stopped at the tray line and vanished into the dark." By dawn, searchers found her footprints, tiny, feminine, leading into the woods and ending abruptly at the base of a sycamore tree, whose bark was scored with 5 deep claw-like gouges. That same morning, farmhands discovered the barn's main beam carved with an arcane symbol, a twisted knot, circled by 5 ravens, their wings outstretched. Underneath, smeared in fresh blood, were the words, "The debt is paid by 5. When Joseph Jr. washed the symbol away, it reappeared the next day, as if etched by unseen talons. The tobacco barns bore similar carvings, and the enslaved laborers refused to enter after nightfall, whispering of the white lady they'd seen weeping beside the corn crib. Sheriff Ezekiel Morgan arrived to collect Clara's body, but found only her Sunday bonnet nailed to the tree. No sign of her aunt, no trace of her dress. In his 1860 report he noted, "Footprints of a child cease at the forest's margin. No tracks beyond, no blood, no hair, no fragment of cloth." He refused to speculate publicly but privately warned Joseph Jr., "This is no common tragedy. Something old and unkind stirs on your land. That evening, as a blood-red moon crested the eastern ridge, the Carrington family gathered in the great parlor for prayer. Margaret's iron amulet, once Margaret O'Leary's gift, sat on the mantel, its chicken foot charm dangling like a talisman against the wall. Joseph Jr. grasped it and felt a vibration, as if the metal pulsed with heartbeat. Mary cried out, crashing to her knees, "It calls us yet." A sudden gust extinguished every candle, plunging the room into a suffocating darkness. In the blackness, Clara's scream replayed, a looped echo of anguish that faded only when dawn's first gray light crept through shutter slats. By September 5, the Carrington barn animals were found mutilated. Horses with eyes gouged, sheep skinned in precise spirals, and a single raven perched atop the butchered carcass of the prize steer. A crude sign carved into the fence read, "5 lives for 1," unmistakably linking these horrors back to the children's deaths. Word of the first omen spread quickly through Bear Creek settlement. Preacher Amos Whitfield rode by the homestead on horseback, preaching fire and brimstone of ancestral sin. "The debt of blood must be paid," he thundered to gathered onlookers. The Carringtons awakened a curse with Joseph Sr.'s betrayal. Now the land demands its toll. Thus the first omen, 2 sons dead, 1 daughter vanished, and unholy symbols carved in barn beams, confirmed the Carrington curse as more than superstition. It was a living malediction, stalking the homestead in the night, demanding the family's darkest secrets be unearthed. In the following decades, every generation would live in fear of the next summons, for the debt beneath the hearth would never rest until its price was fully paid. In the years following Clara Carrington's disappearance, the Carrington homestead became both a shrine to sorrow and a crucible for whispered testimony. As each generation of family and neighbor recorded their experiences, a pattern of ominous visions and unexplained phenomena emerged, evidence they believed of a curse that could not be silenced. Hidden beneath loose boards in the attic, the leather-bound journal of Sarah Carrington, Clara's youngest cousin, offers one of the earliest first-hand accounts of the haunting. July 14, 1872. "I cannot sleep. At midnight I heard soft sobbing beneath my bedroom window. When I peered out, I saw a pale girl in white. Clara, I thought, beckoning. I called her name, but she only vanished into the cornrows, leaving dew-glazed footprints that glowed like embers. I traced them until they faded at the well. Mother says it's my imagination, but I know what I saw." Sarah's entries continue for 6 pages, describing phantom footsteps pacing outside the nursery door, disembodied lullabies drifting from the empty nursery, and a pale handprint appearing on her mirror dripping with rust-colored liquid. Mary Carrington's sister, Louisa Thompson, corresponded with family members in Ohio, begging for intervention. Letter, June 3, 1890. "Joseph, I fear for your sanity. Last night Clara's voice called from the barn, 'Bring me home.' When I entered, the bales of tobacco were stacked in a coffin shape, and I found her bonnet atop the lintel, blood-stained as in 60. I pray you can break this." Letter, October 12, 1895. "The ravens have returned. 3 black birds perched on the roof at dusk, screeching her name. Our dogs refuse to enter the yard. I have begun a nightly vigil by the hearth, clutching the old iron amulet. Still the shadows twist and I hear her cry." In 1901, under pressure to formalize the Carrington legend, Sheriff Ezekiel Morgan documented a series of cattle mutilations on nearby farms, strikingly similar to the 1860 barn horrors, with 5 precisely carved gouges around the rib cage, matching symbols seen at Carrington Farm. Tracks led away from the pens in single file, terminating at the tree line. Witnesses describe a hooded figure moving among the beasts before vanishing. No human prints discovered. Morgan's report included sketches of the raven and knot glyph, and a transcript of a terrified farmhand's testimony. I swore it was her, the White Lady. Her face glimmered under moonlight as she knelt by the dead cow, whispering, "5 more." I fled, but I swear I heard 16 small feet patter behind me. By the 1920s, the Carrington name had fractured, yet one elder, Edith Carrington, preserved family lore in a recording for the local historical society. My grandmother told me that the curse demands a circle of 5, blood for blood, child for child. She saw her own reflection twist into a girl's face with hollow eyes. She said never to speak of the iron amulet beneath the hearth, or the debt would rise again. Her anecdotally preserved details include nightly weeping heard in the chimney flue, footsteps on the porch when everyone lay sleeping, and a cold hand brushing a child's hair, leaving frost on the nightgown. Though separated by decades, these accounts share recurring motifs: a pale girl in white, blood-stained clothing, the arcane symbol of 5 ravens, phantom footsteps, and haunting lullabies or cries. Beyond the Carrington family, neighbors on Bear Creek retold tales of Miss Holt's barn burning overnight and a charred board spelling 5 in cinder, the Patterson Mills 1910, millstones cracking under unearthly light as a girl's silhouette flickered at the water wheel, and the 1932 Kingston schoolhouse children reporting a white figure gliding down aisles at recess, whispering debt, repaid before vanishing. Testimonies also reveal the curse's corrosive effect. Joseph Carrington III, born 1850, was committed to a mental asylum in 1905, after claiming, "The house speaks to me in Clara's voice." Family estrangements left only 2 descendants on Bear Creek by 1940, and Methodist and Baptist ministers conducted exorcism rites in the Great Parlor. None succeeded, with several participants falling ill soon after. Through diaries, letters, official reports, and oral histories, a chilling tapestry emerges. The Carrington curse was not confined to a single tragedy, but wove through lifetimes, manifesting in symbols, sounds, and specter. Beneath the weight of whispered testimonies and family lore, scholars and officials turned to documented evidence, ledgers, inquests, and preserved artifacts to piece together the Carrington curse, revealing a layered portrait of tragedy, secrecy, and unanswered questions, spanning more than a century of record-keeping. The Bear Creek County Clerk's Ledger, in the Kentucky State Archives, meticulously records every birth, death, and land transaction tied to the Carringtons. Samuel Carrington's death on August 14 from fever. Benjamin Carrington's on August 20, 1860 of flux. Clara Carrington's disappearance on September 2, 1860, listed as missing, presumed dead. Joseph Carrington Jr. 6 communication noted in 1885. And multiple property transfers to non-family members in 1910. 1920 signed with a simple X, despite Carrington signing with a distinctive looped C, confirming the chronology of deaths and removals, but offering no explanation beyond the stark facts. St. Paul's Presbyterian Church session minutes reveal the church's alarm. On April 3, Elder Robert Hughes reports disturbances at the homestead, unearthly cries and unnatural lights. On May 1, 1885, a committee investigates necromantic practices after visitors claim to see Clara's specter in the pews. And on June 12, the session votes to excommunicate Joseph Jr. for continuing to invoke spirits, contrary to covenant, underscoring the perception of the curse as a spiritual contagion, lamenting young Clara Carrington lost to the woods. Neighbors fear foul play. The Kentucky Chronicle on October 5, 1901. Cattle mutilations, linked to Carrington Farm. Sheriff Morgan investigates. And the Louisville Ledger, on April 17. Carrington family heir plans to sell haunted homestead. Blend reportage and sensationalism, with the 1901 Gazette reprinting Sheriff Morgan's sketches of the 5 ravens symbol, cementing its iconography. Declassified FBI files from 1935. Case File 35T. Unexplained cold spots in Homestead's parlor. Agent Louisa Caldwell's EMF detector readings spiking at the threshold of Clara's old bedroom. And a 1936 State Police supplement reporting dogs refusing to enter the property demonstrate federal curiosity beyond Kentucky's borders. Artifacts in the Bear Creek Historical Museum include the iron chicken foot amulet retrieved beneath the main hearthstone in 1902, bearing 5 crudely etched ravens and confirmed by X-ray fluorescence as a 19th century blacksmith creation. The blood-stained family Bible, with pages dated to September 1860, containing human hemoglobin. Clara's lace-trimmed bonnet fragment showing claw-like tears matching sycamore tree indentations, and 1901 barn beam glyph rubbings of the 5 raven knot alongside original Sheriff's ink sketches, all authenticated by conservation reports. A 1978 land survey revealed a sealed basement chamber under the kitchen wing, accessed via a trapdoor beneath the pantry floor, containing centuries-old pottery and neonatal skeletal remains unearthed. In 2005, dendrochronology dates the main barn central beam carvings to at least 1859. And crawl spaces linking outbuildings suggest intentional concealment. Finally, the Bear Creek Folklore Society archives oral interviews. Martha Holt's first neighbor testimony of Clara's phantom footsteps. Edith Carrington's recollection of chilling lullaby. And 1930 conference minutes debating whether the curse was authentic folk belief or media-driven myth. Preserve community perspectives that illuminate how the Carrington curse transcended rumor, anchored instead in documented tragedy, ecclesiastical censure, and unexplained phenomena. As documented evidence of the Carrington curse mounts, scholars, clergy, and paranormal investigators have proposed competing explanations for the homestead's century-long horrors. Below are the leading theories, each grounded in different disciplines, along with commentary from experts who have studied the case. Supernatural retribution. The blood oath curse theory. The Carrington curse is a literal supernatural malediction, born of Joseph Carrington Sr. Descends blood oath with the Cherokee healer, a pact that bound the family's bloodline to the land until the debt was paid in kind. Evidence Joseph Sr.'s hidden journal confession, and the iron chicken foot amulet beneath the hearth. Both point to ritual binding. Repeated appearances of 5-point symbolism correspond to the 5 Carrington children targeted. Expert commentary. Dr. Marion Redbird, Cherokee cultural historian. Blood oath curses are well attested in southeastern indigenous lore. Breaking one without proper reciprocal ritual can tether a spirit to the bloodline, demanding restitution. Strength. Accounts for the precise 5-fold pattern. Aligns with known indigenous grudge-binding rites. Weaknesses. Requires acceptance of literal spirit agency. No living Cherokee oral tradition corroborates Joseph Sr.'s specific ritual. Psychological trauma and mass hysteria theory. Generational trauma, rooted in repeated childhood deaths, exhumations, and community stigma. triggered collective hallucinations and psychogenic illness, misinterpreted as supernatural phenomena. Evidence: mass hysteria often clusters around tight-knit communities under stress. The timeline of visions, sleep paralysis reports, and shared nightmares suggests a psychologically contagious phenomenon. Expert commentary. Dr. Helena Murphy, clinical psychologist. When trauma is unaddressed, it can manifest as sensory hallucinations shared across families. The Carringtons' repeated losses created a context ripe for mass hysteria. Strength: explains specters, voices, and footprints without invoking spirits, has parallels in other haunted locales. Weaknesses: doesn't explain physical evidence or recurring glyph carving. Environmental poisoning and neurological effects theory. Contaminants, such as arsenic in well water or lead from tobacco processing, caused neurotoxic effects, leading to seizures, hallucinations, and erratic behavior among residents and livestock. Evidence: soil tests reveal elevated arsenic levels near the spring. Tobacco barns historically used lead-based paints. Symptoms recorded align with arsenic and lead poisoning. Expert commentary. Rafael Cruz, environmental toxicologist. Chronic arsenic exposure can induce neuropathy, tremors, and hallucinations. Livestock exposed similarly may suffer violent spasms and lesions mistaken for ritual killing. Strength: offers a natural scientific explanation for human and animal symptoms. Links structural history to contamination. Weaknesses: fails to account for precise carvings, phantom voices, and the targeted pattern of familial sabotage and hoax theory. Descendants or disgruntled neighbors fabricated the hauntings, carvings, mutilations, and disappearances to extort property, settle scores, or for sensational notoriety. Evidence: property transfers in 1910-1920 suggest motives for forced sale. Odd X signatures raise questions about authenticity. Some glyphs appear newly carved. Expert commentary. Professor Linda Harrington, cultural anthropologist. Rumor can be weaponized. A well-placed carving or staged animal death can trigger a self-fulfilling prophecy, driving families from land and profiting opportunists. Strength: explains financial motivations and questionable deed signatures, highlights human agency. Weaknesses: doesn't account for pre-1910 testimonies, Clara's original disappearance, or multiple independent witnesses. Syncretic curse model. Multiple causes converge theory. No single explanation suffices. The Carrington curse arises from an intersection of supernatural belief, environmental factors, psychological trauma, and opportunistic hoaxes, each reinforcing the others in a feedback loop. Evidence: the homestead's history reveals ritual elements, contamination, community distress, and proven attempts at property transfer. Expert commentary. Dr. Samuel Lynn, paranormal investigator and historian. Haunted sites often involve layered causes. Environmental toxins spark symptoms. Ritual objects lend context. Communal fear magnifies perception, and hoaxes cement the legend. Strength: integrates diverse data, mirrors complex reality of many haunted locations. Weaknesses: lacks the elegance of a single unifying cause, risks being unfalsifiable by attributing everything to the curse. Each theory sheds light on facets of the Carrington curse. Supernatural binding explains the symbolic precision. Psychological hysteria accounts for shared vision. Environmental toxins offer a scientific basis for physical symptoms. Deliberate hoax highlights human exploitation, and a syncretic model acknowledges that real-world hauntings often arise from multiple intertwined causes. In 1954, buried beneath decades of dust and decay, A startling discovery emerged from the Carrington homestead. Its locked trunk revealing Joseph Carrington Sr.'s hidden journal, its leather cover cracked but its pages remarkably intact. For nearly a century this confession lay unseen, its contents poised to transform every theory about the Carrington curse. On April 12, 1859, Joseph Sr. wrote, "At the healer's hut I knelt before her fire and pledged my firstborn child for Margaret's life. In blood I swore the oath. When my sons succumbed, I buried their ribs beneath the hearthstone. 5 bones for 5 promises. Now I write this in hope that my descendants may break the binding by returning what was taken, the unbaptized flesh." The passage confirmed what family lore only whispered. Joseph Sr. had not merely bartered in metaphor, but enacted a literal blood oath ritual. Beneath the hearth, the skeletal remains of a newborn, later carbon dated to 1860, validate his words. These bones, interred alongside the iron chicken foot amulet, formed the heart of the curse's power. Worse still, subsequent entries reveal Joseph Sr.'s own fear that he had misread the healer's instructions. On April 14, 1859, he added, "I thought the price meant sacrifice of lineage. She now says it was the sacrifice of sin itself. I fear her words bind more than my blood. They bind the land. May God have mercy on my soul." This admission reframes the curse not as a punitive judgment from an offended spirit, but as a miscast ritual, one that inadvertently tethered the family's fate to a perpetual cycle of loss. Cherokee cultural historian Dr. Marion Redbird comments, "This journal corroborates core Cherokee binding practices. Oaths sworn in blood must be atoned through ritual reversal." Unfortunately, Joseph Sr.'s misinterpretation made the curse self-perpetuating. Cultural anthropologist Professor Linda Harrington observes, "A powerful example of how sacred rituals, when misunderstood, can create social trauma that echoes across generations." And toxicologist Rafael Cruz notes, "The discovery of physical remains beneath the hearth lends credence to the supernatural aspect. No environmental toxin theory accounts for buried infant bones. These revelations upend previous explanations. Supernatural retribution is validated. Knowing an actual buried child fuels multi-generational guilt and hallucinations. Environmental poisoning is undermined, and any notion of a familial hoax is disproven by the journal's authenticity and forensic evidence. Armed with this revelation, historians and descendants alike recognized that the only way to end the Carrington curse was to perform the restoration rite Joseph had hinted at but never completed, a ceremonial reburial of the infant remains in consecrated ground, combined with a formal apology at the original site of the oath. In 1956, this rite was quietly undertaken by surviving Carrington heirs and the local pastor. They exhumed the bones, placed them in a wooden casket and interred them in Bear Creek Cemetery alongside Clara's unmarked grave, offering the prayer, "Here we return what was taken, may the debt be paid, and the curse released." Eyewitnesses claim that upon conclusion, a sudden flock of ravens circled above the ceremony, then dispersed eastward, their wings beating a final mournful cadence. Since that night, reports of haunting on the Carrington property dropped precipitously. No new mutilations occurred. The phantom lullabies and footsteps faded to myth. In the decades that followed, the homestead fell into disuse, its doors left ajar as if inviting memory to settle in dust rather than dread. Yet some skeptics argue the curse's end was merely coincidental with the community's waning interest. Others insist that only time will tell if the restoration rite truly severed the blood bond. For now, the Carrington curse stands as a testament to the power and peril of blood oaths and the far-reaching consequences of misunderstood rituals. Though the restoration rite of 1956 appeared to lift the Carrington curse, echoes of its terror still reverberate through Bear Creek and beyond. Today, the original homestead stands abandoned, its weathered clapboards and broken windows beckoning thrill seekers and paranormal investigators alike. Locals refer to the property as Carrington House, a crumbling landmark on Kentucky's haunted heritage trail, where guided night tours recount Clara's disappearance and the specter of 5 ravens carved into barn beams. Paranormal teams, equipped with EMF detectors and infrared cameras, stake out the farmhouse most weekends. Some claim to capture EVP recordings of children's laughter or Clara's distant scream. Others report sudden temperature drops and the fleeting silhouette of a girl in white drifting past shattered doorframe. In 2018, a viral YouTube investigation titled "Through the Rift at Carrington Farm" garnered over 5 million views after a night vision shot appeared to show a small hand tapping on a dusty pantry window. Skeptics quickly dismissed the footage as light refraction or a vengeful raccoon, but believers insist the girl in white endures. Local descendants of the Carringtons, few in number and reticent by nature, occasionally speak on condition of anonymity. In 2002, one great-grand-niece, identified only as MC, allowed her home to be featured on a documentary, admitting she still feels a pull toward the old Hearthstone spot. "I walk those fields and hear Clara's whispers in the breeze. I never stayed past midnight. Some things you don't tempt twice." Another cousin, a historian in Louisville, argues that the Carrington story serves as a cautionary tale about unchecked promises and ancestral guilt. It's a family myth, yes, but one rooted in real sorrow, and that gives it power. Beyond the farmhouse, the Carrington Cemetery has become a focal point for vigil goers. Each September, on the anniversary of Clara's disappearance, candles are placed on her unmarked grave beside the infant's reburial plot. A dozen ravens, sketched in chalk around the headstone, represent both the original 5 and the 5 grandchildren who lit them in 1956, and the 2 servants who vanished without record in 8. Witnesses say the candles flicker erratically as if a sudden gust or an unseen presence coursed through the circle. Meanwhile, Bear Creek's annual Cursefest fundraiser benefits cemetery upkeep and local shelter. Visitors don period attire and reenact Clara's final night, complete with lantern-lit procession to the sycamore tree, where her bonnet still lies in lore. Amid the festivities, storytellers regale crowds with first-hand accounts from aging neighbors, ensuring the curse's memory and its lessons survive. Academically, the Carrington case appears in regional folklore and criminal justice courses as a multidisciplinary study. Dr. Helena Murphy's 2015 paper From Oath to Obsession examines the psychological toll on families encumbered by legacy trauma, drawing parallels to other historic curses. The Kentucky Paranormal Research Society maintains a digital archive of sighting reports, photographs, and sensor logs open to the public for study and debate. Real estate developers have eyed the homestead for renovation, but community backlash and persistent rumors of uneasy spirits have stymied every attempt. In 2020, a proposal to convert the property into a boutique inn was abandoned after construction crews reportedly suffered accidents and equipment failure. Investors cited unforeseen conditions and structural anomalies, but local lore whispers of disembodied hands, sabotaging power lines, and tools vanishing from locked sheds. Despite the faded threat of the original curse, a new generation continues to grapple with its legacy. Social media groups dedicated to Kentucky hauntings frequently rekindle debates over the Carrington curse's authenticity and whether modern skeptics can truly exorcise history's darkest sin. As one poster mused on the 60th anniversary, "The curse may be broken, but the story lives on. Sometimes the greatest hauntings are the ones we carry in our own blood." Whether you view the Carrington house as a genuine hotspot of the paranormal, or a compelling case study in collective belief, its haunted legacy endures, reminding us that even when curses are lifted, the shadows they cast can stretch across centuries. And in the hush of Bear Creek's cornfields, on a moonless night, you might still hear Clara's faint laughter drifting on the as the embers of the Carrington curse finally cooled beneath the weight of confession and ritual. One truth remains: the darkest horrors often spring from the human heart. Joseph Carrington Sr.'s ill-fated blood oath to save his wife rebounded through time, ensnaring 5 generations in grief and mystery until a long-buried journal and a solemn restoration rite offered release. Yet the legacy of those events endures in the abandoned clapboards of Carrington House, in the flicker of candlelit vigils on Clara's anniversary, and in the whispered tales passed down around Bear Creek's hearth. Consider how easily a single promise, spoken in desperation, can ripple across decades, transforming love into liability, hope into horror. The Carrington family's journey reminds us that our actions echo long after we're gone, and that unatoned sins can demand a price far greater than we ever intended. Whether you believe in literal curses, psychological trauma, or environmental misfortune, the Carrington story compels us to confront the unseen bonds that tie us to our ancestors and to the land itself. Now it's your turn to step into the circle. Which element chills you most? The phantom footsteps that vanished at the tray line, the iron chicken foot amulet pulsing beneath the hearth, or the revelation that a hidden confession held the key to breaking the curse? Cast your vote in the poll. Have you ever inherited a family legend or secret that shaped your own life? Share your story in the comments. We might feature it in an upcoming episode. Hungry for more horror history mysteries? Smash that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss our next descent into the past's darkest corner. Remember, the line between myth and memory is often razor thin. By exploring these tales together, we honor those who came before us and learn how to break the cycles that bind future generations. Thank you for joining us on this journey through blood-stained pages, haunted homesteads, and the enduring power of choices made long ago. Until next time, keep your lanterns lit, question the shadows at your window, and beware the bargains best left unspoken.